Hello and welcome back to another episode of Supercoach Insider. My name is Ben.
And I'm Chris.
And I'm Swizz.
And this is Noah.
It's
Hey.
Noah. Hey, Noah.
Little baby. 9 weeks tomorrow. Little Noah. So it's been a tumultuous journey, but he's a cute little kid. We've actually just come off the plane from Melbourne, so saw Swizz Town yesterday, and it was pretty awesome catching up with the lads. But he's going well. I'm a proud dad.
Noah met his new workplace, wasn't it?
Yeah. We stopped. We're actually in the Sekilda Road Bridge just outside Fed Square there. Pulled up, took a couple of selfies, and I made sure to let him know that's his future place of employment. So, it was awesome. It was a really, really awesome trip, and got to see a lot of family and stuff. So, so loving our Melbourne family, but also good to be home. Good to be home. And Happy New Year's to all those that are out there today, because it is New Year's Eve. So enjoy your time.
Yeah, definitely get these couple of videos out there as well before the new year hits, and probably be about another month anyway before we get into actual team-by-team analysis. But before we move on, SC Insider 100, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Also, all the audio platforms as well, so Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, you name it. On TikTok as well, Supercoach Insider, look for us, and on YouTube, Chris.
Yeah, search for Supercoach Insider. So, you've been doing a great job on the editing, and apologies I couldn't make the earlier pods for everyone, but luckily we've got an awesome fill in there with Swizz. So Swizz, you've been killing it.
Well,
good bets I hear, so that's great.
Oh, don't even start. Chris tried to hit me up saying, hey, I'll give you 10 points for the exact same bet. And I was like, no, Chris, you got to find your own. Also, shout out as well to splashvodka.com.au. A little bit early in the day for me to be drinking alcohol, but look, we'll make it work anyway. And I apologize, Chris, because Chris was on holidays, and I was like, look, I'm on COVID. The missus is coming home. Swizz and I will just get a few episodes in. And I know Chris is upset. Noah's upset that Chris couldn't make it either. You can hear him in the background. But hey, also as well, trying to hit up as
on the boob
well.
Now, so that's fine.
Trying to hit up Manscaped as well, seeing if they want to continue their lovely sponsorship through our preseason reveals. Midfielders, guys, which is a very big topic. It's where all the points are at. I reckon we just go straight into Chris, our feature guest for today. What are you thinking as far as overall strategy and the midfield line?
Yeah, well, look, I suppose the midfield really ties into the whole rest of the team. Obviously, there's a lot of spots to fill. Like Swizz and like we've always said, that a lot of the better rookies are from the midfield line, so that does help. But we're really stung this year with really expensive lines in defence. That's probably going to take up a lot more cash than we usually would spend in that line. And it means that it's usually you'd have your 5 premiums, your mid-pricer and your rookies or whatever. I'm thinking more along the lines of either 3 or 4 premiums and then a mid-pricer and then your rookies is going to be the more likely structure. I'm a bit tentative to go too heavy on the mid-prices, and the reason for that is there is like 15 guys over 600K, and you could throw a blanket over the top of them as to who's going to be your top 10. So I don't think it's really a wise year per se to just go hunting for a breakout. But there are some really obvious breakout options out there that are a little bit of value. So, grab them where you can, especially with the preseason signs. But at this stage, I'm looking to spend a little bit less in midfield than I would on other years.
So you're with Swizz then, because Swizz was talking like 3 deep, and I was like, wow, that little. And I've gone 5. Like I'm probably seeing the value in defense and forward line a little bit. My rationale.
I'm usually 6 deep, but I understand the 5 deep method.
I didn't know you had 6 fingers. And I'm back. You're back. He's back. But see, my rationale is that forwards and defenders have a little bit more standard deviation, so they tend to drop a few lower games, which, Sinclair obviously didn't do that for me last year when I was hoping betting against him. But midfielders, when sometimes they drop, I'm like, well, do I want to be paying $570,000, $580,000, $600,000 to pick up a Clary when he's dropped, or do I want to try and get a Stewart if he gets tagged, or because defenders can get tagged sometimes, or a Sinclair or someone like that, or a Dawson, and try and pay $550 for them a little bit cheaper. So I'm probably thinking a little bit different at this stage. I know Swizz is different, but I do agree in that the blanket rule, because when you go down from the midfielders, even if you exclude Hewitt, 14 deep, you got Steele at like 14th. And you look at the caliber of midfielders, it's such a wide range of premium midfielders. Swizz, where do you stand?
Mate, well, you know where I stand with that. It's I
in
think there's
Victoria.
yeah, the best place to stand, mate.
In the eastern suburbs.
Yeah.
We're narrowing
Um
it down.
narrowing it down, yep. Mate, yeah, well, I try to fit in as much value as possible there in that midfield, but it's also that there's always the best rookies come from the midfield too. So, but as we talked about the other day, the rookies are the ones that will define my end structure. So at the moment, it looks like the best rookies are in the midfield. If it becomes the case where there's more defenders or forwards rookies, which doesn't usually happen, then yeah, then I'll look at bringing an extra premium in. But if we're loaded up with rookie midfielders, yeah, then I'm three deep in that midfield. Well, actually, I'm technically, yeah, no, I'm still three deep in that
See,
midfield
normally
for
I
that
would
reason.
agree, but there's been a lot of people that are coming back from injury in other lines that are cheap. So normally, when you say rookies, yes, the best
Hmm.
rookies probably are in the midfield, but then there's so many quality players that didn't play much last year in the forward line, in probably particularly the forward line, maybe a few in defense. That I think it's not necessarily maybe the best rookies are midfielders, but then I think there's better value on other lines, which I guess we'll see. It's still very early in the preseason. There are a few rookies that I am looking at in the midfield, which we'll get into as well. Let's start off with premiums anyway, because again, blanket rule. Let's start off with the big few. And Chris, I'm going to start with you first because you are the biggest advocate for this man, have been for the last 12 months. Rory Laird, 703,000. Are you spending 700K on Laird?
No. I suppose we'll start there. And look, there's a couple of reasons why. I don't think he's a bad pick. So for anyone picking him, I'm not saying he will be a bad pick because he's still a stat pad machine. No one's gonna out stat pad him. And I found it hilarious last year. Sam Berry makes, a AFL record for the most tackles in a game. In the same game that Rory Laird makes the record and beats him by one for the most tackles in an AFL game. That's just a classic Rory Laird thing to do. But I see him as, you're going to pay what you're going to get out of him. So he's not a value pick. Yes, he'll probably still go 120 plus, I think, with ease. I don't think that's going to be an issue. But there is some conjecture over more points in that Adelaide midfield. Rankin's obviously come in. He's tipped to be playing more mid. Sam Berry's obviously now basically a full-time midfielder in there. Rory Sloane's going to come back from injury. What does his split look like? He's really only a midfielder. He can play a little bit forward, but is really a midfielder. And I put him in the same scope as, say, a Ben Cunnington, who, they're on the outer, but how much mid-time are they actually going to get this year? I'm not sure. And how does that impact Rory Laird? Well, he can play on a wing, he can play behind the ball, he can play a little bit forward, but he can be anywhere. So I really don't know is the answer. And for that reason, I'm saying, look, he's not really going to go up. I think there's really only other one way to go, and it's probably going to be either A, stay the same, or B, he's going to go down slightly. Now, there's another school of thought that because he's so consistent, he's probably not going to drop too much at any point. Picking him up for under 600K is probably not going to be a thing. So I understand the pick, but there are value options this year, and one way to save money is just not choosing Rory Laird. So that's one way I'm looking at doing it.
Yeah, would you put him in the same boat as Clayton Oliver though, or Clayton a bit more steady? He's still 699,000 Clayton
Well,
Oliver, but similar average. Swizz, where do you stand on these
yeah.
top end premiums? You're only probably going to start because there's a big difference when you go so Tuke Miller and above. Tuke 662,000, Lockie Neal 676,000, Clayton Oliver 699. Surely you can't start too many of these boys.
To me, this is your vice captain, and that's
Yep,
you
agreed.
want, especially your captain. You want that safety. So as the reasons Chris just said there about Laird, and I'm huge on the guy, but there is that always possibility that roles can sort of change with that Adelaide setup.
Well, let's go Clayton Oliver then. We've moved
Yeah,
on from say Laird. What about Clayton
yeah.
then? Because
So
his role's the same.
Clary, we just know. That's why I was
Yeah.
comparing the two, because Clary, we just know what he's going to do. He's their number one midfielder in their contested beast, safe as houses.
Can you run both? Because I don't know if you can spend that much.
I don't want to spend on both because I think, as you said, Laird's kind of topped out on value. Like he's not going up to 750, so
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that. Where a couple of those other premiums below that we'll get into, I think there's a little bit more value there. They've got the potential to go higher. So I think Clary's the one you have to start because just the safest house as captain option each week.
Melbourne, top guaranteed top 4 again, you'd say. Better forward line. They've just added Brodie Grundy.
Yeah.
Like Clary's going to go from having Max Gawn hitting to him to Brodie Grundy hitting to him. I mean,
how good is that though? He's going to have 2 of the best tap out work ruckman. He's just going to be loving life, because otherwise it'd be Jackson in there, and Jackson's good, but Jackson's definitely a follow-up ruck. And I think he'll just be licking his lips. All the Melbourne midfielders, I think, will be absolutely licking their lips.
Yeah, so I mean, there's an element of that pick that you go, well, is there some value there? I mean, I know that he's obviously averaged quite a lot last year, but is there another level that he can get to? Still young. He's put up some amazing numbers last year. Could we see Brownlow Clary this year? That could be a thing. So
and again, you're looking for security though.
That will always be him and Petrarca taking votes off each other, but the guy deserves one.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But again, safe as house is top 8. He's someone that you could definitely see finishing in the top 8.
Top 4.
Speaking of the top 8, let's talk about the Brisbane Lions. Lockie Neal, 600 and we can't talk about a Carlton player, can we, Chris? Lockie Neal,
absolutely not.
676,000. Now with Dunkley coming in, Lockie Neal, he had obviously some very strong games, but there were games where he just did the team role, and when he did the team thing, he was fine with the team winning, because he's like, look, if I have to take some heat and I have to get tagged, that's fine because the team will win. And are we paying $676,000 for Lockie Neal, Chris?
Again, no, for similar reasons. Obviously, the addition of Dunkley is a huge chunk of their midfield, and I just want to see how that goes. I think Dunkley went there to play a lot more midfield than he has been playing at the Dogs, which is obviously good for him. But how does that impact their midfield? Does that mean that basically Jared Lyons is no longer a midfielder, and he's basically goes back to his former role, which he played in the back end of his Adelaide career and a little bit in the Gold Coast, where he's more of a forward than he is a midfielder? That could be something that would allow Neal to continue to play all those minutes there. They still got up-and-coming guys. How much does Will Ashcroft get? There's another midfielder that is going to want to have inside minutes. I think the Lions are a unique proposition in what they can do this year. I'm not saying that I'm writing Lockie Neal off to do it. I just want to see it. And at that price, I can sort of afford to go, I can fade him a little bit at the start. Maybe he gets a tag game and has a lower one and you can pick him up. I know he does start with the Thunder though, and that's sort of what is in the back of my mind as well. Like imagine if, Lockie Neal averages 140 for the first 6 weeks. Good luck, right? So, I think he's more for me at this stage an upgrade target. Where's the buys for
first buy? I was waiting to jump in. So they have the first buy, which is the benefit of if you didn't start him.
Yeah, so for me, it's a no at this stage. But again, I'm not going to begrudge anyone for having him. I mean, there's so many of these guys. You're just like, wow. Yeah. I mean, you could start with him. They're all viable options. It's just we're at this point of the season, preseason, looking for reasons to not pick guys, and that's generally what it is right now. So
even Tuke Miller, 662. He's probably the last one before we round into some other bits, but we'll get a bit more general. Same thing, second buy, I think. So there's only 2. So Suns and Geelong. So it's like, okay, well, do you pick him with a premium? So again, VC and C option, lots of 130 plus scores. Or do you kind of go, okay, well, maybe I can upgrade him because they do have the second buy. So it's either one way or the other. You either go, hey, I'm going to start someone because there's only 2 teams with that buy, so you're not going to miss him. Or you can then, again, on the other flip side, you can actually look to upgrade him with the second buy to then bring, because there's not really many Suns or Geelong players outside of Stewart and Tuke that you might actually want to bring in, is the only flip side.
Yeah, that buy is actually a really interesting one because the more players you can have from that buy, the better off you're going to be in the other buys.
Yes.
But
again, Geelong and Suns, who is there?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Stewart,
I mean,
Tuke.
I really like Noah Anderson as well. We'll talk about him a little bit later, but I mean, Gold Coast, you've got some good rookies as well coming through. You got Ben King there as well. In the forward line, I know that's one of the reasons why I'm looking at having him. He can carry you through the buys. Geelong is so weird and unique. Every year they're going to throw something different at you, and that's what I kind of like about them. They're going to have a guy in a different role at the start of the year, and they're going to be Supercoach relevant, and we're going to have to jump on. So keep an eye out, but Stewart obviously is the real catch, and then we'll see what happens outside of that.
Hey, who averages more between Noah Anderson and Dangerfield this year, Chris?
Noah Anderson by length of the Flemington Straight.
Oh, that could be our bet. Could be.
I'll take an over-under on 5 games. Danger only, how many games did he end up playing last year? I think he played like 16 games or something.
Nah, less than that, I think.
It can't be an option that you can pick.
He's so cheap though. He's like 400 and
I know. Yeah, well, we probably will touch him, but yeah.
Okay, so what I reckon, so Callum Mills, Petrarca, Zach Merritt, Brayshaw, Parrish, I think are all in this blanket. If you really like him, if they have a good preseason, then yes, if you think they're top 8, go for it. There is 2 that I'd probably put similarly. I don't think you can really start, well, Walsh is out for the first month. I don't think you can start Cripps at the inflated price, possibly. I guess, if you like him, maybe go for it. Same as Stewart after back surgery.
Cripps is also injured, isn't he? He's gone in for surgery, is he? So he's not.
No,
I
think Walsh and Hewitt. I don't know about Cripps.
Walsh and Hewitt. I haven't heard much about Cripps.
Oh, okay.
But again, at 611,000, maybe if you're into it, but I think he's someone that is prone to drop low games.
Well, the problem is if he's fit and he has a massive preseason couple of games like he did this year, how do you not start him? Because we've seen what he can perform like when there's no George Hewitt around. Now there's no Sam Walsh. So if he starts as like the primary midfielder in there, he's probably going to start averaging 130, 140 for the first 5-6 games.
Yeah,
so
true.
It's going to be rough scenes if you don't own him, if that's the case. But it's Patrick Cripps, and we all know that it's a bit of a risk when you choose Cripps. But I think the one that me and you both eyeing off, and I think probably most of the Supercoach community Swizz would be Bont.
And McRae. I was going to pair them together. Bont and Pelly.
Together.
Yeah. So Bont is 639, McRae is 634. Put them side by side. Who do you think is going to average more then? With Dunkley out, who benefits the most?
I personally think Bont.
Yeah, same.
I think McRae benefits most.
Look, to be honest, I think there's probably 10% value in both of them. So what did they average last year? I think that Bont, I think Bont's got easy 15 points per game in him. I think Bont could be the number 1 player this year.
We're all waiting for it. It's got to happen one season.
Now, having said that, we're still waiting for Bevo to make the obvious move that we all think, which would be he stops playing him as a forward player and starts playing him as a primary centre bounce midfielder.
The thing is, they finally got that forward line now.
And that's it, yeah.
There's no excuse.
Oh, well, Shaky's gone. So everything's out the window now, boys.
The thing is, and so what we saw as well at the end of last year is that Toby McLean got a lot of mid-minutes, right? So which is one of the mid-rookies, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But how much mid-minutes? Is he going to squeeze out Bont because Bont can play forward? Because that would shit me to tears. So I do still want to see it in the preseason. But he's got to be your number 1 mid, in my opinion. If the Dogs are going to make a splash, it's going to be off the back of Bont basically dragging them across and saying, "Yeah, we can do this, boys."
See, my only worry about McRae, which doesn't affect him that much because he still gets around the contest, but with Lockie Hunter out, do they try to push him more to the wing to start off with Bont's the one in the midfield?
That's what I was wondering. Even with Bailey Smith, does Bailey get more of a slice in there? Because Bailey, he was a forward, and then all of a sudden in the final series, Bailey Smith played like a lot of time in the guts, and then actually made him ineligible to be a forward in Supercoach. So
I personally think Bailey Smith. Well, again, I think he's irrelevant this year because he's mid only, right?
Yeah.
He's a better winger for them, but they don't need him inside. But I know he got a lot of inside minutes. He's their best winger by a country mile. He's the fittest. He's the one that runs the most. He's not a great user, which is unfortunate. That's the one knock in his game, really, that he needs to work on. But he's probably their best winger, in my opinion. So,
I think with a fit forward line, the Doggies, you've got Bruce as well, Aaron Norton, you've got Ugo Hagen, Darcy, who was in defence, can also play forward. So I think this is probably the time, as you're saying before, boys. I don't think they need Bond forward anymore.
No,
rumor has it that Bruce has also been training as a intercepting defender. So there's scope
points
for that in the preseason. So we'll see how that one goes. But he could, again, I think he's very cheap in the forward line as a rook. So
160.
Keep an eye on that one.
Very cheap, very, very cheap. Okay, let's get into some of this value because this is going to, again, I think it's hard to pick a breakout player, but if there was.
Before you get into value, sorry, Benny, did we really discuss Callum Mills? I think he's always just overlooked in this conversation.
That's why I overlooked him.
Yeah.
Which he's always overlooked.
Which is a bit surprising because we know now with the keys to that midfield. He is, I think, one of those underrated. He'll be picked in bugger all teams. And there's no reason why he couldn't go even higher than what he did last year.
I still think that there's an element of Callum Mills that he's their Mr. Fix-It, unfortunately. It's not a knock on his game, because I think
not
he's
at all.
one of the best midfielders in the league. And he can still score well behind that. We saw that in a game last year. He got moved behind and still managed. I think he scored 160 that game or something similar, like something ridiculous. So but because of that, it sort of caps his ceiling. If he's going to be that guy that whenever Sydney get under the pump, he goes behind the footy, he's not going to be around the ball as often.
And
Is he worth more than 640? Maybe.
Yeah, he's 640. He's right on it. So I think he's probably priced at what it is.
That's what I
feel like he's the one that everyone's going to ignore. Just got that funny feeling that he could be right up that top end this year.
But again, I think with the Fix-It, if Rowbottom and Warner keep developing because they're both young, good mids, then it's like, well, if they have an injury down back or the game is at a swing, then Mills is probably the one that is, the best person to go back and shore things up. So it was, again, a blanket rule. You could spend 10 minutes talking about each and every single one of these 14 midfielders. But there are a few that
Brayshaw's another one that obviously
Brayshaw's in that same boat.
And I think that he will go again under the radar. But I mean, he's got the scope to be amazing. We all know how good of a footballer he is. That's for start. But he did start to get a bit tagged out of games, and then he started to work through those tags. So those are really rolling through. Freo looked to be a lot better this year, and I think that they have got scope to be a top 8 team. And I think that's what it's going to take for Brayshaw to really push into that, 115 plus. What did he end up averaging last year? 111, yeah. So, I mean, just shy of that top tier. And I think that's where he probably sits this year, maybe. But
it was 10th overall.
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. And look, it's not a bad selection. But at that price, you're saying to me that he's going to be guaranteed top 8. He's undervalued right now. And there aren't better guys for cheaper.
That's the hard thing. It's not that I can't see him going an extra 3-4 points. It's who he pushes out of the guys above him.
Yeah.
Petrarca is probably the weakest link.
Yeah. When you're selecting Brayshaw is the question. And same with, I mean, Parrish is the same. I mean, all these guys.
Exact same.
Jack Steele is an interesting one because he's been the top midfielder before, hasn't he? Or close to?
Yes, close to, yeah.
So there's a bit of value in Jack Steele, I think. And at his price, he's probably the cheapest Uber premium, would say, or potential Uber premium. So I see him being in a lot of teams this year. But also don't like the Saints now without Maxi. So I'm sort of veering away from starting any St Kilda players. But yeah, that price, it's hard to pass up, right?
The Ross Lyon factor as well. I'm always a bit gun shy about picking coached by them because just the way his game style usually goes.
Lots of tackles though in a slow style.
It's an interesting thing because
it can be chip and charge too.
So I listened to his interview on SEN, and he said that the way that he used to coach is not the same that he can coach now. The style of play has evolved far beyond what he used to coach like in terms of his game plan, and he's evolved it to a more modern style.
Imagine that interview then. He's like, oh, hey, so my skill set's pretty much 10 years outdated now, guys. And this is pretty much what I'm thinking of doing on what I've seen.
I think he still plays slingshot football, but he just doesn't flood as much as he used to. So what that will mean will be check out whoever's going to be the intercepting defender at the Saints because they're going to score ridiculously well. So there's an opportunity there for someone to jump into that, whether that's Wilkie or Houston or whoever, not Houston, Howard or whoever they've got back there that they want to throw into that role. Their midfield setup traditionally, I mean, they had some really good scorers back in the day. I mean, Lenny Hayes was an absolute jet. Nick D'Alessandro was a good Supercoach scorer for a time. So, there is proof in the pudding that his midfield setup and the way that he wants to do the mids, there's going to be some points there. So I'm not too worried about that. If anything, I'd say if they can overcome Max King's massive hole of their forward line, they're a top 8 team. And I think that's probably, even though they probably overrated their list a little bit, I think with the right coach, they can probably scrape into that last spot. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they go.
Competition's definitely getting closer. I put Merritt and Parrish in the same sort of boat. Maybe Merritt benefited from Parrish not having a great season, but Scott coming in, I think Essendon probably win more games. They should have won more games. I'm interested in both of them, but again, it's who do you leave out at that point in time? I think Parrish has probably got some value. Merritt just keeps taking step by step by step. And then when he gets no attentions like the Lions gave him, then anything's possible. So I'm definitely tempted. I've been tempted by Parrish. For me, I think Steele's the value pick out of that top echelons. And then
what about another pair for that I'd like to compare the pair? Both from the same team and both very, I think, very good value at this point, and that's Josh Kelly. I think he's basically priced at the last year's price at $582.
He's $100 different,
and Tom Green. So both, I think Tom Green might be the value pick of the season.
Well, that's the next part. That's the next part. Because when we go into, I'm going to disregard Kelly because fuck GWS players. Pure and simple.
Kelly's
There's only a couple.
To tell it, and I'm just going to love every moment of it. And I'm just going to remind you.
Are you picking him in standard? Is that what you're doing?
I don't think you can go both him and Tom Green. I think you're sort of hedging your bet one way or the other.
I think there are about 15 people better than Josh Kelly at this point in time.
Yeah,
but well, let's go into. We'll pair in Green with LDU with Titch because I think they're the three around that price point that people are looking at. So let's go with Green. He's 534,600. Started the year off on an absolute heater. The reason there's so much interest is because GWS traded out Taranto, Hopper, and pretty much I think it's his
Tanner
midfield
Brunn as well. Who was getting some CBAs there as well. Not a lot, but he was definitely in their rotation, that's for sure.
So the issue is new coach. The issue is GWS. But I think it's his midfield, right? So he showed enough in the first sort of part of last year. He was averaging extremely well, contested beast. He was pretty much likened to Paddy Cripps when he was younger. I just think there's so much value there. At 534, I don't think you're going to get him cheaper again for the whole year. Where do you sit, boys? We'll go Chris and then Swizz on the Green train.
Yeah, I mean, obviously all the underlying stats from his junior career right through have him as the number one contested possession player in the competition by an absolute mile, and that's including contested beasts like Clary and Jack Steele, etc. So, he will be a Supercoach jet. It's now is the opportunity. I agree with you that you won't be able to get him for this price probably ever again in his Supercoach career until he's on the outer. So the question is going to be, is this the year that they go, okay, you're a 75, 80% CBA midfielder? And if they do, you can't not have him. I don't think there's not a reason in the world to not have him if he gets that sort of CBA time in the midfield. And I think that of all of those guys, and I'll touch on each of them individually, I suppose, when we go around, he's probably presents the most value at this point. So, yeah,
Swizz.
I really don't want to start a GWS player. It's just don't.
No Leon, though. No Leon.
But he hasn't left my side so far. He's. I think the good thing for us was naturally young body and just the way they had all those midfielders at the second half of the year. He had those 3 weeks where he had those 50s, and that I don't think that happens again. He'll be that little bit more fitter. His body continues to grow and develop. Like he started the year on a house on fire last year when he was at number one midfield. I think they might have had a couple injuries. Is that why when Kelly was missing or somebody was missing early and he was playing as that inside mid? And that 164, 106, 147 to start the year. And then he had 3 other scores around that 110 mark. And then they started to get their full sort of list back. But as you said, now with the 2 boys in particular missing, I think he's just takes Hopper's role. He's the main contested beast in there. There's no competition for him. So I don't know, he's going to spout out the 160s, but he's shown that he's got a ceiling. So that's always good because if he goes bang early and that, you've missed him. And that
I'm confident saying he's somewhere between 105 to 115 this year.
Yeah, so, I think that's it. And
that's the big debate, though, isn't it?
Well, he finished an average of 97 last year. So I think of all those sort of players at that price, he's the one that's got 10 to 15 on him.
Yeah. Now, question for you, Swizz. So in your structure at the moment, is he sitting at M4? So when you say 3, are you saying 3 and then are you classifying him technically as a mid-pricer?
Green's at M4. So
yeah, so I'm classifying him as technically as a premium. I would say him at M4 for me. is where sort of it starts to trail off.
Yeah, yeah. So I've got him in that sort of cosy midfielder, in between primo bracket. So I kind of he doesn't really have a category breakout potential. So I look at the three big boys, and then Green's in his own sort of category there at M4.
I've got Green at M6.
Yeah, you're
wow. I respect that. Look,
not even kidding.
Each their
at
own.
this moment.
I'm about to edit your team anyway. So.
Oh, that's right. They're in my login. Yeah, no, I agree. So it's about watching to see what this coach is doing as to whether he has a monopoly. It's also about, well, hey, if you save $100,000 there, can Green get close enough to that top 10? Can he be in the top 10? Can he be close enough to the top 10 where you could use that $100,000 difference? But I think his high ceiling does make him very relevant. The next one that people were considering is LDU for $557,000. Again, I think it's hard to pick a breakout. And if I was, I think it would be Green over LDU. But there is a lot of hype on the way that he finished last year. Is anyone sold by LDU outside of North supporters?
Well, at the end of last year, I was saying to myself, getting my fucking team. Like, he looked like he broke out late last year, to be completely honest. And unfortunately, he's at a price now. It makes it really hard to pick him. I can see it. I can definitely see it. One thing that will be interesting is, how much of an impact will Cunnington have on that midfield? How much of an impact does Clarko have on the midfield? What we've seen in the past is that Clarko is happy to lose possession of the ball and regain it a half back and slingshot. So that sort of game style doesn't necessarily bode well for midfield points. And at the Hawks, I mean, Sam Mitchell was
Mitchell and Hodge. I can never remember those midfielders being huge Supercoach point players. Fantastic, brilliant football. It's a bit like the whole Richmond strategy when sort of Dusty, Prestia, that they're never top players. They've got a good even sort of spread. So he might become a better footballer, but I don't know if he'll become a top line Supercoacher.
I suppose this sort of ties into, and I know you guys talked about him in the last pod, but I really see Taron Thomas as one that is going to take a step forward because he's going to be hopefully playing off the half back line. So what we saw under Clarko is that they want their elite users behind the ball because it's number one is retain the ball at all costs. So retain possession of the football, and that's that they've been experimenting guys through that back line for however long at North, and it's just turnover city. It's who can turn over the ball the most, really. Or at least if you've got to turn it over long.
Well, that's what Jaden Stevenson was doing back there, wasn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
He turned it over in the goal square and pretty much gave up.
He's going to find himself a delisted Stevenson in a couple of months.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's the whole thing with Thomas as well. Stevenson and Thomas are either going to find themselves delisted very quickly or they're going to be, bloody top line players and that because Clarko won't fuck around.
Mate, him and Dow can have a nice little former first round pick party, I think, at the end of this year.
They can have their own league in between the VFL and the AFL.
Pretty much. Now, going to your point with North Melbourne, so not only do you have Cunnington probably coming back in at some capacity, you've got Powell. He had, I think, pelvis issues or something last year, didn't play much. Then you have Will Phillips, had glandular fever twice, who we'll get into later as well. And then you've got Wardlaw coming into the mix. So there is definitely a lot more competition possibly for mid-time compared to what he had last year. So,
but it is his midfield. It's 100% LDU's midfield to
that's
run.
Not the problem.
Who's he pushing out of the top 10? That's the other big thing.
It's not about his performance in that midfield. It's about overall over Supercoach.
Agreed.
So does that mean how good are North? Do you really want a midfielder from a bottom team? How often is that successful?
Do you really want to watch a North game?
The flip side is
that's fair call.
The flip side is we did talk about the Hodge and that. We have had the Tommy Mitchell midfield with Clarko running it, and he was just a ball magnet. So does LDU become Tom Mitchell and just grab the ball, handball, and grab it 40 times a game?
Yeah, and that's another. I mean, Tom Mitchell at his peak was just let to do whatever he wanted.
Yeah, and does LDU get that same freedom and become that guy? And that, just trying to think Clarkson's potential coaching strategy there. That's really one that I said somebody tagged us the other day and I said, well, Waverley Park's not that far from me. I'll try to get by and have a look at a couple of their sessions. Oh, no, it's not. They're in Hawthorn anymore. Fucking Arden Street. That's going to be a pain in the ass. I'm thinking Clarkson. Yeah, at Waverley. No, we'll have to try to somehow look through the bloody fence there at Arden Street to see what they're doing with LDU because if he looks like he's going to be that guy that's going to get 40, then there's a part of me that thinks, they'll, as you said, they'll rather do the slingshot footy and that, and he just becomes a better footballer, not a better super coach.
Can we segue into Titch as well?
Yeah,
we absolutely can. Yeah.
Well, and I want to get Chris's opinion on Titch.
Just first on that, LDU is a sort of pick that Abdul starts round 1.
Oh, 100%. And his buddy going 150, 150, 150.
He fades 100%. Clary or some shit. Clary gets tagged round like 1, drops a Abdul, 60. And
he'll be listening to this too, Abdul. I'm like,
yeah.
And he'll be like, that's my new fucking weapon. He's on the Richmond chat all the way. Here's weapon number 2 for the fucking year. Stuff your fucking weapon.
Yeah, and so for that reason, I'm almost considering just being like, nah, blow it all up.
Blow it all up. Done it. Tom Clary. Green, LDU. It's going to be
Bont McRae, LDU, Tom Green.
Not even Bont McRae, mate. It's going to be LDU.
Yeah, LDU, Green. You go Brayshaw or something.
We laugh.
Shout out to Abdul. Shout out.
Like, that actually sounds pretty good.
Yeah. So again,
you use that 150 grand, you know?
Talking about who do we fade with Tom Mitchell, he's $528,000. He's gone to Collingwood. I think they brought him in to be a pure midfielder, but I can't believe people are starting him, Chris. Now I could be stupid, but who's he kicking out then in the top 10, or is it just you picking him on value?
Taylor Adams just has to miss 5 games a year or 10 games a year like he normally does, and he's the number 1 mid. Look, the biggest issue at Collingwood last year was their clearance differential. So that's the entire reason why he was brought in. He's not going to play forward for the Pies. He'll play pure midfield. The other consideration, though, is that they will get Dacos to have more CBAs this year. Now, I don't know what his split's going to be like, and I know you guys probably discussed him on the Defender pod, but that'll be interesting. So we need to work out that top 4 rotation, really, from the Pies. What's it going to look like? Because they do have still Pendles running around. They've got Taylor Adams in there. They've got Jack Crisp that's supposed to still be running through there. I think the Maynard experiment's done with. Not that I think that they won't throw him in there at times for a bit of grunt or just to tagging roles potentially. But Titch is there to get the ball and feed it out to the runners. And Dacos is there to kick the ball from Titch. So that pairing is just going to be beautiful.
I think Crisp is probably the most at risk in that midfield mix, to be honest.
I don't know if it translates necessarily to points, though. And again, it's just not the style. Like, is Titch a 120 player? Probably not.
Not at Collingwood. No.
Like a 105, maybe?
Yeah.
105, 110.
105 to 110.
Does Crisp just pretty well end up transitioning with Dacos? He goes back to half-back.
I think that's going to have to be the plan. Because I don't like, and they tried experimenting Dacos as a forward at times.
Yeah.
And that's just not where, like, you can't
accumulate as much.
No, he can't get the ball. Like, so he's not really like, he can take a mark, and he's crafty with his footwork. And if he gets the ball, then something's going to happen. But he's like,
I'm not my dad. I'm not my dad.
No, he's an accumulator. You don't put him there. If you're going to rotate him either to a halfback flank or to a wing, because he can run all day.
And that's the thing. If you're in your forward line, though, you definitely have a defender accountable for you. If you're playing halfback or wing or even midfield, you can lose your opponent through hard work and traffic. You can actually outwork them and lose them in transition.
That's what he's done his whole entire career. And that's what he did from halfback, is that he just burnt off the forward. And then people wonder why he's just all on his own in the middle of nowhere. It's because he ran 100 meters to receive a handball. Like, that's the sort of hard work that Dacos can present. So it will be interesting to see how it works out. I think it was a good trade for the Pies at the end. I would have preferred someone maybe with a little bit more height, because they still lack a little bit of height in that midfield. But Pendles is still there, so that allows that a little bit to subside. But yeah, whether or not is he a premium mid option, I don't think so. So I'm not selecting him, and at the similar price to Tom Green, right?
Yes.
So Tom Green, we're saying, could be in that top echelon of midfielders, whereas Tom Mitchell's going to be just outside at best case scenario. Is he a value selection? Slightly. You'll get a bit of value out of Tom Mitchell. I don't think it's enough to select him at this stage of the preseason. Just my personal opinion.
I agree. I just think he has a point to prove, though, to Mitchell or whatever. Got pushed out a little bit, but that's his role. And again, role dependent. I think there is a little bit of meat on the bone, but not
I don't necessarily think that's either of their fault. By the way, I think that they just either of the Mitchell's fault. I mean, Sam Mitchell's trying to develop a team for the next 3-4 years, not something that they wants to win.
Not
now.
pad his stats,
and so in order to do that, he basically just gave up his CBAs to develop his midfielders faster.
And
fair
it worked
enough.
though.
Like,
Yeah, for sure.
I think it will hold them in good stead moving forward. So look, whatever, it is what it is, and hopefully Mitchell brings a premiership to the Pies.
Jesus. I was about to nod and agree. No, I'm not going to do that.
I had to stop myself as well there.
Yeah, get stuffed. Don't you know, Swiss has already said it's the Brisbane Lions year this year.
Yeah,
He's already claimed it.
I've put the moz on you because I said that about the Dogs last year, and then I also backed. Who did I back last year? The Dogs, Freo, and Carlton, and that fucked them. So probably might put money on Brisbane this year, and that'll fuck you guys.
I find it more funny that Chris is thinking Fremantle's a top 8 side, but he didn't even think they'd be top 8 after first 10 rounds last year. So, welcome to the team, Chris.
Oh yeah, they were all right.
Like Perth.
Someone we didn't touch on, but I just wanted to quickly touch on at a similar price point. Sorry, guys. Is Noah Anderson, which again is this his year? His year. I think he's got the perfect game for Supercoach to be able to take it. That's going to be dependent on a few different factors, but whether or not Gold Coast are any good, I think is probably the primary one. Having Ben King back does help. I think he could potentially go 110 plus. So maybe not necessarily for standard, but very, very good in your draft leagues. I think he might be one to skip out. And then another one, just looking here quickly. Chad Warner. Now, I was nothing short of impressed by his entire season, Chad Warner. Definitely a smoky in drafts, that's for sure. And I think he'll be overlooked in a lot of drafts, but he's got the game and the inside game to be able to tear it apart if he could just hit his kicks, because he breaks away from stoppages like nothing else, but then doesn't slow down to hit a target. It's his only downfall in the game.
He's the one Abdul starts and watch
him
go.
Watch
him go 120 for the first month.
But you know what, he could. That's the thing. He's got the game that can really burst out.
The thing I always look for is players that have got to have shown the ceiling, and he's done 140s plus before. And in
the AFL Grand Final, he had the highest player rating on the field, and they got pumped by 80 points. He had the highest player rating out of anyone on that field.
Yeah.
In a big game, that says a lot to me. I think
player. Once they were 10 goals up, they went, we don't need to run after him.
Yeah, but he was still, he was just, it was him versus Buddy 22 Cats.
Yeah, legitimately.
That's true.
And I mean, look, there's scope for that in that Sydney midfield. I was big on Rowbottom a few years ago. He hasn't shown, I don't think his development anywhere near justice. I don't think he's half the midfielder I thought he was going to be at this stage. So hopefully he does tick over to that next stage. But at this stage, it's still Luke Parker. It's still, it's obviously Callum Mills midfield and Chad Warner. Those three guys run the show in there. So
I agree. Let's get into some midfield value. So we've got we'll go one by one, but there's Menegola, Ash, Sheed, and Hopper. Now I know there's a little bit of SC Elites is like fucking Menegola. Can't be burnt twice by the one stick, can you boys? So we'll start off with the important ones. So I think Ash, Sheed, and Hopper are probably the big three. Now Ash is a little tempting again based on the reasons that we said with the midfielders going out. He's only 335,000. Lockie Ash. If he gets fewer midfield time, he's someone that I am looking at. I think I'd rather pay the extra 200 for Green. But again, Lockie Ash, boys, if there's a role in that midfield not tagging, do you think he could be a little bit of value?
No.
No is a simple answer. But I mean, I just think that Finn Callaghan's ahead of him in the pecking order.
Yep.
And I mean, when he moved into midfield, a large percentage of that time was spent tagging. So that's where he dropped all of his really poor scores. If he gets a role that is go find ball, get ball, deliver ball, then sure. I just haven't seen that yet. So I'm not at all on that train unless I see that's a if you see it during the season, then you got to jump on. But at his price as well.
Okay, so Callaghan $90,000 cheaper is $244,000. So he's definitely one that I am watching as well.
Yep.
You can only watch a couple GWS players, right? Sure.
Yeah, it's the problem every year. We get stuck with them. At least at 244, I think you can't go wrong on that. I feel like everyone else is just going to burn you. Outside our man Tom Green.
$332,000, the exact same price for Sheed and Hopper. Now, Chris, as a biased Collingwood supporter that was definitely holding, is there any circumstances in which you would start Dom Sheed ever?
As a very unbiased person, absolutely fuck no. No. But I don't see the merit in starting even Yo. man, something's got to change at West Coast. They put up the shittest year I've seen from a football team in a long, long time. I can't see them pulling that out with their current list. So,
thank you. Yeah,
100%. Why even bother?
I picked them for bottom like 4 or 6 last year. I can't remember how low I had them, and that was with everybody saying, "Oh yeah, they got Yo and Gath and all them if they were going to be fit." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's still going to be bottom like 4." Like they've all dropped off the cliff. So when are they playing some of these kids and that? They've got just too many. Well, you can't help anything with the injuries, but yeah, look at that age of that midfield. They're still one of the oldest midfielders going around. So
don't throw Elliot Yeo into the mix. I'm going to hashtag bless Elliot Yeo, and that's coming from a Brisbane person that hates every single person that's ever left Brisbane.
Because then I'm going to make you start him. And I'm going to make a bet on Elliot Yeo versus anyone.
Okay,
he's in my team. He's in my team. Elliot
just have a look at this midfield as a whole there. And that. So Tim Kelly, who West Coast aren't getting to see the best of him, and that Shuey, what would be Shuey now? He'd be at least 28.
Shuey's hamstrung to Simpson.
To that Gaff was an awesome player and that, but he can't get through the season now. And then if you're talking about throwing Sheed in there as well. And then, Liam Duggan's never really been the midfielder that they've wanted in there. And then you got Jack Redden as well. He played 21 games.
Redden's gone, retired early.
Retired. So, but even still, it's like who you would think it's a junior coming in to replace him, but not.
Dom Sheed's never really been like a pure centre bounce mid anyway. So I can't even, let's say they go, okay, Dom Sheed, he's fit and he's back and he's blah, blah. He's not playing 70-80% CBAs. He's not. So
like the year before he played 22 games and he averaged 82.
Yeah. Not going to happen.
What do you think? He's not going to improve on that.
He did one good thing his entire career. He's got a key to the city. He can just go shut the fuck up now, can't he?
That's right.
Oh, Dom Sheed. God bless him. I disagree about Yo. If he's playing in defense, that ball's going to be
purely
in
for TikTok.
So
much. So you know.
Yo's a different story because he can tackle and that, and he can rack up tackles. I think he's the one that probably more.
I think Yo's okay. Depending, I would prefer if Yo was behind the ball.
Yeah. If he's behind the ball, he's getting 100 touches a day.
Yeah. Just does pretty well. But in saying that, they've still got Hearn and Witherden down there, don't they?
Surely Witherden, they've just decided he's just not good enough for AFL football.
No, clearly
he's got the defensive nous of a waffle player. Like he's just, I don't even know. I couldn't
put Witherden in the midfield. Give him a go. Can't get much worse.
The guy is literally sees a contest and runs the opposite direction. I just can't. Witherden's so terrible. He's one good thing is his static foot skills when he takes an uncontested mark. That's his one only good trait.
Call that the James Aish. Hopper, 332,000 as well. Is he the one that you could at least watch if he's playing complete inside CBA?
Not even watch. I think he's in my side. And that he's not playing anywhere else. He's playing 100% CBA in the Richmond midfield. The year before, he played 21 games and went 97. And I think even if he's around that mark, it's 30 points on his average this year.
Yeah, I think he's going to shit in 150K. And look, he's not going to be in your final team.
No,
or anything like that.
For sure.
But he'll make you money and he'll be a good point generator in the meantime. Yeah. I don't think you can start without him because he's probably the only one around that price that is going to be a sure thing.
Yeah.
So as long as he's fit, obviously, which at the moment he seems to be, so that's good.
That's been his whole problem. As long as he's fit, he's your 100 guy. No problems with that, and that's all I'm expecting him to do. But for that price, beauty, get him on side.
Absolutely. Now, one I want to throw in this sort of mix as well, which you guys have just completely overlooked. I just want to see it now. I've been destroyed for saying this, and that's okay. But I think there's a role for him in Essendon's best 22.
Oh, you're going to fucking say Will Setterfield. I'm looking at him in two. I'm going, this prick says Will Setterfield.
It's because here's the only reason why, right? They don't have a single midfielder on their list over 181 centimeters. Every single one of them is a midfielder.
But they have 100 friggin' midfielders all the same friggin' height that need to bloody play.
I think Chris is causing me to drink here, boys. This is the sort of
That's right. I was about to say, I'm like, I need to get Sam a drink here.
No, look, I'm just saying, if he's in preseason, and he racks up 40 touches in a preseason game, and you see him lining up round one, he's a watch, right? He's surely a watch. Don't tell me he's not.
The problem is that means I'd have to watch the Essendon game.
I
want to do that.
You're
Chris, I
an
agree.
Essendon fan. You go to them all the time.
I agree. He's a great watch, Chris. You can watch him 22 times a year, but not in my fucking side.
And most likely in the VFL.
And Chris, and also, I get where you're coming from. I get it. It's the big midfielder and that, but Parrish and Merritt rack up so much more there. It is what they're lacking, but he's not the one they need to do it. Like,
isn't it?
Yes,
because who else?
But they don't have anyone else. But
you can't disagree that set a field, right? And if there's one team at Essendon, their field is not set.
I love how this is a 30-minute pod and we've gone 3 hours and we'll set a field.
I like that we've just had all this discussion about top 10 mids and no one bats a fucking eyelid. We mentioned set a field and it's like argue over some irrelevant guy from Essendon. It's the worst thing in the world.
About it a solid goal, but it's just not on the cards now, is it? Sorry, no. Look, just watch. All right, and look, it could just end up going with Archie Perkins as that bigger mid that's in there. Look, and he gets a lot more CBAs, and Setterfield's not in the conversation. That could be it, but he can't be worse than Tom Phillips.
Yeah, but
he can't be worse. He can't be worse than Devon Smith Mark II.
I'll tell you what, Chris. I'll bet you $100 that he averages more than Will Phillips and Devon Smith this year.
The Tom Phillips, you mean? Combined.
Combined.
I'm not going to take that because
I think
they're not playing.
The Bombers have pretty well picked up. That's why they got Elijah Sartis, because of his height and build and stuff. Now I don't think he's ready, but he with him and Hobbs, it depends on what Scott wants to do here. Does he want to go Perkins?
Hobbs is a 183 centimeter.
Yeah, but does he want to go Hobbs, Sartis, Perkins with? And develop the future, why he's got the brand new team and that, so they've got time on his side? Or does he go, no, we're going to go Will Phillips, Setterfield, these blokes and stuff and try to win some games? Interesting how they'll go about it.
Sorry, boys, we've run out of our Essendon quota. We want to keep viewers not fucking lose them 52 minutes in, so we are moving on from Essendon.
I'm not such a bad person that I hate Essendon that much that I don't respect them.
I would have rather you mentioned Buddy Warple than Buddy Setterfield, and even then, Buddy.
Okay, so let's get into some of these cheaper options. We've already mentioned Callahan at $244K. There are a couple others, again, that have been in the system. So instead of paying a Wardlaw or someone that's quite expensive for a rookie, you've still got like Devon Robertson could actually be part of that midfield mix. I know it's harder with Dunkley coming in, but again, they got rid of Robbo, right? I think just pure for the fact to keep Robertson. So he's someone that I am watching. I don't know if there's much going on there. Flanders for Gold Coast.
Nowhere near that midfield. You just got Will Ashcroft.
I know, but he might be on a wing, but I guess for 240 on a wing, maybe.
Unfortunately, they brought in Dunkley, probably going to be the best midfielder this year, and Will Ashcroft, the fucking best kid in the competition. Yeah,
fair. But I'm watching him. Flanders, is Flanders ever going to stand up? Another top 10 pick for Gold Coast, 256,000. He's someone that I could be swung by at some point. Nick Cox, 198,000, had just did his ankle, I think, in the ankle in the preseason, but again, another winger for 198. I'm talking. There's at least 3 or 4 people that have been in the system for 2-3 years that are priced similarly to some of these other rookies.
Talk about Setterfield than these guys, mate.
The biggest lock for me is Will Phillips, boys. 100%, 158, 300.
Yeah.
No, and the reason is he had glandular fever twice last year. He has Ollie Wines quads. All right, he has big legs for a boy. He was fit last preseason, got glandular fever twice, and they're really excited to see what he can do this year. So apparently he is really fit, which is North Melbourne saying that they have a fit player on the list. But he is, for one, he's locked in as far as he's in my structure at this point in time. So I think Will Phillips.
I think so, yeah. I think he
can't
really go past him at this point. But before we go into that, we just scooted past Cooper Stevens, who should be in that midfield rotation and is only priced at 265K. Now, I don't know if that's going to be low enough to make him worth it. And how much time he's going to get in there. But obviously, they've recruited him over. He's had a really good, short career at Geelong, but they're just squeezed out with the amount of mids that they've got there and the depth. And Hawks are trialing new mids, so that's one that could fire. I don't know. Again, he's a watch for preseason. We'll just see how we go.
I think that's me tapped out, boys. Swizz, any others on your watch list?
Potentially Matty Johnson from Fremantle.
Yeah. So as far as rookies, Johnson, Blakely, Phillips, and I think there's a couple others.
Do you know what the sneaky one, because Richmond always seem to like to play some rookies, is Steely Green. Watch him, and that I think he might get some games.
Is he a blend between Steele and Green? That's
the hope, mate? That's the hope.
If only
117k, mate. Wouldn't we love that?
It's like Lewis Mitchell.
Yeah,
just a blend.
Just a blend. Mitchell Lewis.
Anyone else on your shit list, Chris?
In terms of rookies, look, I think we just need to see it. The big one, I mean, he's the mid forward, so Josh Sin as well from Port. I obviously only played the one game last year. The problem with these, and here's where it's going to be really interesting, and this is why Will Ashcroft is a real red light for me at the moment. Is Will Ashcroft the 23rd player at the Brisbane Lions right now? Because if he is, how often is he getting subbed? Or how often is he?
You know what? I kind of nearly think. Well, I think he might be the 22nd, and Jasper Fletcher might be the 23rd. I think they both could start.
Yeah, I just don't see it. I mean, it all depends on who's playing forward. So, does Jared Berry? He was playing midfield. Is he going to come back? Is he fit? Is he playing midfield or is he playing forward? Like, what's this mix going to be at the Lions? Rayner, he was transitioning to a full-time midfielder. Is he going to come in and play mid-time or is he going to play as a forward? I think you can't really play him as a midfielder right now with the mix that they've got. So, what's gone out? So, Robbo's gone out and you've had Dunkley and Ashcroft and Fletcher come in. Plus, they've still got...
and Robertson, who didn't really play much. Robertson kept out Robbo.
Right. So there's quite a lot of depth in the midfield at the Lions, and I worry about Will Ashcroft at 210k or whatever, 270k, whatever he is, being a sub risk. Now the difference between, say, and this is a real point, the difference between, say, him versus, say, a Sam Walsh or a Nick Dacos or guys of the past few years, Matt Rowell, for example, gone number one, best midfielder in the draft by an absolute mile, is that they all went to teams that were basically shit and went straight into a starting midfield or a starting role that could rack up the pill. I'm not sure, especially with the new sub rule, that Will Ashcroft is going to get that freedom in Brisbane's midfield that we have in Carlton's midfield, the Gold Coast midfield, and Collingwood's midfield. All of those teams were shit at the time, so they've come in, made them better, and that's great. But this is a different beast.
Going into a midfield with McCluggage, Neal, Dunkley, Berry, and Lyons. Jared Lyons had a bad year. I think he had was it OP or no? He had some issue.
Yeah,
Jared
Lyons
was carrying an injury. Yeah, so then you put him in the mix too. Plus, then you have Rayner, Zach, so Bailey as well.
Yeah, so I mean, look, he's always going to be a place setter, I think, in most teams anyway. But right now, I don't have him anywhere near my starting side because I need to see Will Ashcroft in the preseason and see what role, what minutes is he going to be named on the field. Obviously, without Dan McStay now, are they going to go a 2-ruck system or are they going to go a 1-ruck system? They're going to play Hipwood out of the ruck or something like that, or are they going to play Fullerton? What are they going to do? Because if it's only a 1-ruck system, then it's likely going to be a rookie that they're going to sub. If it's a 2-ruck system, it's likely going to be a ruck that they're going to sub. These all play into it. Into my decision-making process on Will Ashcroft. And I just wanted to get out there that I'm not totally 100% sold on having him in my starting team.
I think that's very fair. Very, very fair. I think he's also the sort of guy that Will Ashcroft, they could just play him and maybe, hey, we'll give you like one rotation through the midfield, but maybe you just go and play forward or come in off the bench. And I think he's still a quality player that he'll probably be in that best 22. But you're right. If they're winning a game, they might try and look after him and say, hey, you know what, mate, we'll just sub you off for today. We're winning this game. Thanks very much. Good experience. And we'll nurture you through. Because I don't think they want to go and break him.
No.
Yeah. Either. And then even Nick Dacos at the start of last year said that, that they were trying to manage him because they were worried about his tank. And he was only posting 60s or something, like after the first 3 weeks or whatever. He had started slowly and had a bit of an ankle issue. And they wanted to actually get him to skip matches, but he was actually able to pull up on game day and was like, okay, well, yeah, I'm playing. I'm not sure where Will Ashcroft's tank is, but Dacos is at the top of the game. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to watch anyway.
That's where you just you consider spending the extra 40 for Finn.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where he comes into it. And I think that Phil Callaghan is also, though, unfortunately, he's probably got a similar issue, right? The only difference is I do think that GWS will play 2 ruck systems. So they will probably, and they've proven that it works. So it'll be Braden Bruce and Matt Flynn. So one of them's going to go at 3/4 time if there's no injury, you'd say. So, yeah.
I agree. I think that wraps us up pretty much on the nose on an hour, boys. Midfield, a lot to talk about, a lot of contentious sort of issues with Setterfield and such. And the reason it's a longer podcast and it's definitely one that gets discussed more is because, well, that's where the highest price is. That's where the most points are. That's where your VC and your C are, particularly this year more than ever, because rucks you can't rely on as far as your VC and C like we have in the years gone by. So rucks is so midfield is pretty much where it's all at, and it's make or break. Realistically, any final words, boys? Or are you done? You're wrapped up. You're ready.
I'm good.
All good, mate, and look forward to getting on board with more potties with you guys.
Yes, you're welcome home, Chris.
Yeah,
welcome home, and I can't wait to make
keep you around after this. Yeah.
I can't wait to make.
Love it,
and I can't wait to get onto an Elliot Yeo or a Dangerfield bet at some point. We'll talk soon.
See you, mate.
Thanks, guys. All right, bye.